Which AFC North receiver could see a return to resurgence with a 2021 scheme change? Can one polarizing AFC running back finally achieve fantasy glory this season? And is it time to move a healthy first-round pick from last year further down your boards? Plus, the back-to-back champion in the FFPC Genesis League, Brad Kezema, will break down his attempt at a three-peat and give us some rookies he's eyeing from a dynasty perspective and more. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com, with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here's Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Thank you so much, Rob, and thank you to the Quiet Howlers. Remember to check out their music at quiethowlers.com, including a brand new spanking single as well from the Quiet Howlers, just out recently within the last week or so. Greetings and salutations, all the Bulkaholics and Ferrelliacs tuning in to the show tonight. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com. I am your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman, and my co-host is indeed the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. And Farrell, a big night for you and the Quiet Howlers tomorrow in Louisville.
Oh, Balky, yes. Tomorrow, a return to the stage for the Quiet Howlers and a show at a venue known as Headliners here, and they have worked very hard to turn this into an outdoor, socially distanced venue. The first return of a concert. The show's been sold out for weeks, and yes, it'd be great to see Shadrick and the rest of the band back on stage tomorrow night.
Yeah, no question. That'll be a lot of fun for sure. We're going to have a lot of fun on the show tonight as well, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to break down the Dolphins backfield, the Jets backfield, where we think Aaron Rodgers is going to end up playing football this year, if he does, and the two-time defending champ in the FFPC Genesis Classic League, Brad Kezema, a.k.a. Kaz of the North, is going to drop in to talk about his selections of Darren Waller, DJ Moore, Ronald Jones, and more in last week's Genesis draft that we covered right here on these airways. Shout out to the chat room right now. Feel free to post any questions you might have in there. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, the show is at HSFF Hour. I am at Eric Balkman. Farrell is at J. Farrell Elliott. Brad is on Twitter at Casmo11FF. And then, of course, check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. I just personally drafted in the Run to Daylight Championship last night. Had a lot of fun doing that and signed up for a checkered flag draft coming up on Memorial Day. So I'm very excited to do that. You can do that at KFFSC.com. Don't forget about the Draft Masters. And, of course, the main event, live or online, whether you're playing from the comfort of your own home in Cincinnati or Louisville, it is all there as well. The show's Facebook page is facebook.com/HSFF Hour. And if you want to give us a call tonight, 347-426-3682. That's 347-GAME-OVA. If you want to email us, highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com is where to reach us. If you have any questions for us or for Brad, now is the time to send them in. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, tweets, and emails in the fantasy feedback segment coming up later on in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer and my best friend, Bryce, and, of course, our producer and mutual friend, Rob. Dynasty startups back in action, going strong at the FFPC at myffpc.com. Don't forget to cash in that free $35 FFPC team when you sign up for the Football Guys Players Championship by the end of June and draft before July 15th. 2 six-figure grand prizes in that competition this year. Draft's already underway, and you can save $100 off your first team, $400 off each additional team with the FFPC main event right now, too. That's another $500,000 grand prize. $5 Cinco de Best Ball options for best balls at FFPC. Don't forget about the checkered flag at KFFSC.com and the Draft Masters there as well. Thanks to Ball Guys, Draft Sharks, NBC Sports Edge, and Rob for tonight's Fantasy Flash. Let's get into it. Rashad Bateman, the rookie receiver who was the 27th overall pick in the NFL draft this year, has been signed by the Baltimore Ravens to a 4-year, $12.6 million contract. He runs 6 foot, 190 pounds. He led the country in yards per route run from out wide, as he was a 20-year-old sophomore and the Big Ten receiver of the year a couple of years ago when he was playing alongside Tyler Johnson, who's now a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. He received 61% of his snaps last year in the slot, and his career marks of 36 broken tackles and 15.7 yards per reception are still pigeonhole proof, as NBC Sports Edge put it, in the NFL, since he had at least one catch in all 31 games for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Not the most dynamic athlete in the world, Farrell, but you got to believe him, Marquise Brown, Sammy Watkins out for the Ravens this year. That's an improvement of where they were last year. Your thoughts on Bateman, not from a dynasty perspective, but for redraft this year. What are your expectations for Bateman as a rookie catching balls from Lamar Jackson?
This is very, very dangerous fantasy territory, Balky. This is the Fugazi of fantasy football wide receivers. Last night in our draft, the KFFSC draft that you were in, he went to our beloved friend Bobby Sangerman in the 10th round. And what we're dealing with here is a player that is wonderfully skilled to do what the Baltimore Ravens need him to do. He could be an all-rookie player. He could possibly even go to the Pro Bowl, be very successful with this team, lead them in receiving, and still be a disaster in putting up fantasy numbers. There's just not enough balls in the air. Last year, Lamar threw the ball 376 times. 88 of those went to the tight end Andrews, not counting all the other secondary tight ends that are utilized in this passing attack. 2,700 yards passing for Lamar. They say they're going to open that up. They said that last year too. If he does, Balky, if they do open it up, what is that, a 20% kick? That still puts him very, very low, very in the second half of quarterbacks as far as passing yardage. I just don't see it. There were 3 games where Lamar threw the ball less than 20 times last year. And you might say, well, Farrell, those were defensive struggles where they didn't have to pass the ball. They just did it with a running attack. No, Lamar threw the ball less than 20 times. The Ravens scored 47, 38, 34 in those games. Quite frankly, they don't have to throw the ball. This player is brought in to be a big body receiver, to win the contested passes, to catch the ball outside of the passing window, and to block. And he's going to do all those things very successfully. And when he does get a catch, the announcers are going to talk very, very glowingly of him. But he can he'll be a great football player who will sink your fantasy team.
He went in the 10th round of the KFFSC Run to Daylight draft last night, as you said, Farrell. On average, he is going at the 11-12. That's the 11-12 turn in FFPC Football Guys drafts since those started about a week and a half or so ago. That's wide receiver 51. Certainly you're rolling the dice there, but this is right after Devontae Parker and Mike Williams, right before Mecole Hardman and Jalen Reagor. That's where Bateman is indeed going. Let's talk about another receiver actually in Bateman's division. Juju Smith-Schuster was on the Adam Schefter podcast recently. He says he's going to play more outside receiver this coming season. Smith-Schuster was saying how his role is going to change after we saw him in the slot last year for 103 targets worth. He had 22 targets while he was on the perimeter, 6.5 yards per target. That's almost 2 full yards less than his career average. 8.6 yards per reception last year. That was 3.5 yards under his career average. Obviously, if you drafted Juju Smith-Schuster early last year, you're probably disappointed in his output. Farrell, are you a believer that this could be a rebound to greatness for Smith-Schuster here with more targets on the perimeter, catching balls from Ben Roethlisberger?
Yes, especially where he's being drafted, Balky. You'll give us the mojo on that, but I think that this player represents a bargain there, and he will return to some prominence, and he doesn't have to He doesn't have to play like he has in the past, but he has to play better than he did last year. The whole team does, especially towards the end. Oddly enough, he was in the slot, not a lot of yards per catch, but even out of the slot, there were poor passing attempts to him. He couldn't get open in that scenario. Moving him outside lets him get to something that's more traditional wide receiver role for him, and we can get it in early. Steelers have to, of course, accommodate Claypool closer to the ball in the formation. So with those two players there, I really like them lining up on one side of the ball and going after it. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I should give a shout-out to Darren Armani, fantasymojo.com. If you are playing in the FFPC, it is a must as far as all the data you can get there. And over the course of the last week and a half of the Football Guys Players Championship, Smith-Schuster is wide receiver 31, currently going in the 7th round. Think about that, too. I mean, he was like a second-round pick last year. He has fallen 5 rounds. He is now going in the 7th round, right behind Odell Beckham and Cortland Sutton, right ahead of DJ Chark and the rookie Devontae Smith out of Philadelphia. All right, so one other thing I want to get into here is a situation not of something that happened, but something that almost happened, Farrell. Field Yates from ESPN reported that the Dolphins were actually next in line to claim Kerryon Johnson before the Eagles picked him up off waivers after his release from Detroit. Now, Miami was long expected this whole offseason to either sign a running back in free agency or draft a significant one, as a rookie. Now, neither one of those things happened. And Myles Gaskin, who was, pretty much the guy last year in the Dolphins' backfield, is the guy we think again in 2021. But Farrell, if this report is to believe, maybe Miami's not done gumming up the works for Gaskin, and it's going to be buyer beware with whatever Dolphins running back you choose to roll with this year, right?
No, Bucky. I'm very bullish on Myles Gaskin, and I think that's a fine based on where he's going in the draft. I think you're getting bargain, and I think Gaskin is going to be very good. We talked about it on other shows. Field Yates, I don't know him very well. I looked him up. Seems to be another graduate of the Trent Green School of Face Design. I am sure that he is with Kerryon Johnson talking. I'm sure that on his speed dial somewhere, one of the Rosenhaus brothers, because they represent Kerryon, and they're probably talking that up about him coming to Miami. That's an interesting landing spot for him. We don't need to see too much into this commentary. I believe whatever running back is picked up, as this column might allude to, will be standing on the sidelines cheering Gaskin on to 1,100 yards a year and 8 touchdowns. I have big belief in Gaskin. And, if we want to talk about running backs that are already on the roster, very, very late round pick at Miami was Jared Dokes, and I like him. If you don't know him and are not familiar with the work he did at the University of Cincinnati, you ought to take a look. He's got that trait of a winning runner, good size, and he's overcome a lot of adversity. He missed a year in Cincinnati, which is a whole other story that we don't have time to get into here. But Jared Dokes is a very good player. And I'll be glad to see him get some of that opportunity in Miami.
Yeah, 244th overall pick in the draft, 5'11", 230. As a guy who didn't start until his senior season, which was a redshirt season at Cincinnati. But 75 yards per game, almost 5 yards a carry. That was actually the lowest of his career. So certainly player to watch out for, especially when you get later on into your FFPC Dynasty rookie drafts or later on in best balls, or even later on in Football Guys Players Championship drafts, somebody that you'll want to keep in mind. I do want to point out, too, that Myles Gaskin is going as running back 23 right now. That is at the 506. He is going right after Josh Jacobs and Travis Etienne. He is going right ahead of Javonte Williams, Kareem Hunt, and Mike Davis. Keeping it on. Oh, actually, let's go to a question from the chat room right away, Farrell. I hesitate to ask you this because I think I know where your Pittsburgh Steeler receiver loyalty lies, but Hudson Kern-Reeve wants to know if we can rank Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, and Chase Claypool in FFPC points this year. I'm guessing you would probably put them Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Deontay Johnson. Would I be correct in assuming that?
I think they're all going to be interchangeable from week to week, but they're all going to be top scorers for you, and they'll all need to be week-to-week fantasy starters. If you stack them, I don't really see. Well, perhaps you could, and if you have stacked two of them, I would say that they need to be on the field together most of the time in your lineup. Ben's going to get this straightened out, and this offensive coordinator is going to come up with a plan that will work well with the new running back. They're going to have a balanced attack, and they've got a tough schedule. They're going to need physical players, so I may, for that very, very reason, tip my hat in the way of the biggest guy, which is Claypool.
It is going to be difficult to stack them, at least in Football Guys Players Championship drafts. Deontay Johnson is wide receiver 21 at the 509. Then it's Chase Claypool as wide receiver 28 at the 607. Followed shortly thereafter, Juju Smith-Schuster, wide receiver 31 at the 701. So they're all basically within, I would say, roughly a round and a half of each other. Maybe you could pull it off, but it would be tough to do. But, man, I'd love to see it. That'd be fun. Hey, we got Brad Kezema just coming up in 1 minute here. The last thing I want to get to before we talk to Kaz of the North and how he's won the Genesis League the last 2 years is the running back situation out in San Francisco. Now, there is a report in The Athletic today, an interview with Bobby Turner, who is the 49ers running backs coach, and he believes that the rookie, Trey Sermon, is the type of running back that can really succeed in Kyle Shanahan's offense. When you look at Turner's experience with them, he was with Mike Shanahan in Denver in the 1990s. Terrell Davis, Alandis Gary, Mike Anderson. Remember all those guys? They all crushed it, and Turner was the running backs coach there. None of those guys were drafted before the fourth round. Sermon was drafted in the third round, the 88th pick out of Ohio State after he transferred. He can, this is what Bobby Turner's saying, his reads, his instincts, his ability to communicate and retain, I like all that. The other thing to keep in mind here, Elijah Mitchell, the running back out of Louisiana Lafayette, also went to the Niners in the draft as a sixth-round pick. But, you know, we consider that Jeff Wilson's still there, Raheem Mostert. Farrell, I know you like Raheem Mostert a lot this year. Do you still like him as much after the Trey Sermon selection in the third round?
Yes, but I've had to temper my expectations of him getting touches. There'll be high-quality touches, but will there be enough? We look like a team here that wants to run the ball because it's not necessarily particularly concerned about what they're going to do at quarterback. That job's going to be determined, and we could end up splitting time with the two quarterbacks there. So it's a situation where, and I love this coaching staff. I mean, you alluded to it, of what Shanahan has done to draw on his father's history in the business. Not only is Robert Turner, you know, he's been there 25 years of experience, but near and dear to my heart and all Packers fans is Johnny Holland. He's been there for 22 years. Chris Forster's been in the NFL for 21 years, and now he joins O-line there. Everybody knows about Sermon, Balky. Let's put the spotlight on Mitchell. Mitchell from Erath, Louisiana. I love that part of the world down there. It's 1,800 miles from San Francisco, and you know, from a cultural standpoint and a life standpoint, it's 1,800 miles from New Orleans. You know, it's just sitting. It's football territory. Old school Jet fans will remember Johnny Hector that came from New Iberia right down the road, and I'm just so thrilled to see Mitchell get this opportunity, and he tore it up at the Senior Bowl. He was one of the guys that daily improved. You know, somebody comes and flashes a day, and then they kind of disappear in practice. This player showed something new, something different, and something to like every day. There's no way that they try to move this player off the active roster and put him on the practice squad. He won't survive waivers, and he'll be playing for someone else. So Mitchell, and we talked to so many dynasty players, guys that are a lot better at that format than I would ever be. But I can tell you what, Mitchell is a guy that I'm going to put on my dynasty team if I can get it.
And even when you consider redraft, too, Elijah Mitchell in the Football Guys Players Championship, running back 68. He's being drafted at the end of the 16th round. So he's still a selection for redraft players, going behind Kerryon Johnson, Salvin Ahmed, right ahead of Jamar Jefferson, and one Todd Gurley, by the way. Elijah Mitchell, who would have thought it? He'd be drafted ahead of Todd Gurley his rookie year.
Everyone says, when you have a difficult running back situation to figure out, go with the least expensive option. This player is the least expensive option. And, it's hard to predict the future, but I could see a situation where Mitchell, who shares that acceleration and that toughness that we see out of Mostert, and, a lot of injuries in the history of this backfield with 49ers. So who knows? I think it's you could make many worse 16-round picks.
Yeah, and that's where he's going. You think about the two more expensive picks there, Mostert and Trey Sermon, not going that far from each other actually in drafts. Mostert running back 30 at the 705, Trey Sermon running back 33 at the 801. That's also Michael Carter and Lombardi, Lenny Fournette territory there as well. Let's get into some championship territory now, Farrell, as I want to bring on tonight's honored guest. He actually joined the FFPC with some $35 classics back in 2015. Then he entered his first Dynasty League with the $500 number 18 league in 2017. 2 years after that, he became a card-carrying member of the 26ers, whose membership, by the way, now contains one Farrell Elliott as well. After some second-place finishes, he finally took down the 26ers 2.0 Dynasty League last year. He is the two-time defending champion of the Genesis League and is here tonight to talk about the draft last week that could give him the coveted three-peat. Please welcome in Kaz of the North himself onto the show. It is Brad Kezema. How's it going, dude?
It's going very well, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on tonight.
Kaz for the three-peat.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. Yeah, we might be talking about this time next year, that the Pride of Canada is celebrating a third straight Genesis championship, Farrell. Anything's possible. We definitely want to get into that with you tonight, Brad, about how you think your draft went. Before we get into that, tell the listeners what you're doing for a living in the Great White North.
I am an independent financial advisor in Sherwood Park, Alberta, which is a suburb of Edmonton, about 70,000 people.
I'm trying to think about this. We'll talk about Chuba Hubbard in a little bit, but Chuba Hubbard was a guy that you've known for quite a while up there, Brad.
Yeah, he's a hometown boy. Went to high school just a couple blocks from my house.
Wow, that's great.
Small world.
That is great. I love the history of some of the Canadian players, and so many of them, with athleticism and with opportunity to come south and play, are propelling themselves into the NFL. CFL will never see that player, will they?
Doubtful. The only guys that usually end up back in the CFL are the guys that burn out in the NFL or get injured. So doubtful.
Well, I have to tell you something that personally you should find very alarming. It's because I've been reviewing some of your drafts and I see where you and I are thinking a lot. So that could have problems leading to a three-peat. We're thinking a lot alike here. And one of the players that I've been on for a long time is Raiders tight end Darren Waller. And last year, when I drafted him, people have said, you've seen the best of Waller. And I said, well, I don't think so. I think he's going to catch more, and I definitely think he's going to catch more touchdowns. He fulfilled that. 17 improved catches over the previous year in 2020. He went from 3 to 9 TDs. You drafted him as one of the 3 tight ends in the first round, and I believe Waller belongs there. I've been drafting him there since we started, with some of the classic drafts back in February. So I'll ask you this, because I still see room for improvement, room for more. Do you think Waller improves on those numbers from last year, or do you think you're just very, very happy to have him and get a repeat performance?
Repeat would be great, Farrell. I think he does have room for improvement, depending on how much the rookies they drafted last year do. Losing Aguilar, there's a bunch of targets that go out the door there. The thing that really got me with Waller, I never owned any of them last year, and always ended up watching those afternoon games, and he would be against me. So I watched a lot of them, and man, he was just such a focus of cars, and he played so well last year that this year I bought 2 orphans, and he's on both of them, and took him in the 12 spot in the Genesis.
That's the kind of orphan that's easy to adopt.
I'm trying to think about this. I think because Waller I've never historically owned all that much in my leagues, and I think I had him, his big breakout year, and then for whatever reason he just kind of priced himself out of where I was comfortable drafting him the year after that. But guys, you can make it 3 Darren Waller fans for 2021 on the show tonight, because I drafted him as my starting tight end in the KFFSC Run to Daylight draft last night too. So I'm very excited about that. Looking very forward to all those millions and zillions of targets that he'll see again this year. So Waller was your first pick, Brad, and then you actually started a big time running back run in the second round with your first pick there at the 201. You end up going with Joe Mixon there. You had the opportunity to draft guys like Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, Nick Chubb. These are all players that, on average, are going ahead of Joe Mixon in drafts with the Football Guys Players Championship. But you have to get your guys. So why was Joe Mixon your guy there?
You know what? Those guys are all great potential breakouts this year. So it was a tough one. Eckler has no competition in that backfield, or very little. Swift doesn't have much competition, but not sure what that Detroit offense is going to do. Aaron Jones had the Rodgers question mark, and Chubb is sharing with Hunt for another year. So I've always been a Mixon fan, put up with some tough years. So, he's my guy. I think he still has the talent and went for it.
You are obviously buying in to the wide receiver core with the Carolina Panthers. New quarterback, continued impressive. I've just been impressed with the head coach to a point where I kind of see him as a throwback to coaches that I remember that I was impressed about as a younger guy. And, this week, Teddy Bridgewater in some podcast probably said some things he shouldn't about how the Panthers practice. Said they didn't practice red zone, and that they didn't necessarily practice 2 minutes. And the head coach Rule, he said, we're very comfortable with the way we practice, and we love Teddy, and we wish him very well. And I think that sets a good example through your team. Last week we talked about Terrence Marshall joining the Panthers, and it's a situation where I thought that Robbie Anderson could be a good influence on this player. But the mystery player of this receiving core, and I think I have always underrated him, and maybe like Balky with Waller previously. I've never had this player rostered very often. And what can you tell me about DJ Moore, and what do you expect from him this year?
He would kind of fit into that same mold for me as Mixon. I just think he's a talent. I think he's a great route runner. I think he's great after the ball. And I think he's dependable. I think that is now, new quarterback comes in there, so there's a little bit of a question mark there. But, again, I'm just going to take the talent. I think Robbie Anderson is going to be another I have him in a few of my teams, and I think he's going to have a good year this year. The rookie, I'm a little hesitant sometimes with the rookie wide receivers when they're coming into some competitive targets. But I really like Moore for the player he is.
Okay, I like that. That's a great answer.
We are talking with Brad Kezema, the Kaz of the North, as it were, on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight, the back-to-back winner of the Genesis League, the champion of the 26ers 2.0 Dynasty Draft, or Dynasty League in the FFPC as well. And Kaz, let's talk a little bit about Dallas Goedert here, because when you grabbed him at 601, that made you the first team in Genesis this year to get a second tight end. In fact, some teams didn't even have any tight ends at all. So I want to ask you, not necessarily about the Goedert selection itself, about the player, but the strategy behind this. Were you trying to force a tight end run? Do you kind of think it's important to get two pretty good tight ends early on. I mean, what were you thinking when you decided to grab Goddard at the 601?
Well, part of it was history. So last year I ended up, I had the same draft spot last year and took Kittle as the 12th spot, who gave me a few weeks of good production before he went out for the year. And I was very thankful that I had Noah Fant in the background, and I also was really lucky to pick up Bobby Tonyan for $39 on waivers. So having tight end depth, I don't think, especially if they can play in your flex spot, then that's just bonus. And I think Goddard has the opportunity this year, if Ertz does move on, to garner a lot of targets in there. So I also had Fant and Goddard, kind of the last two guys in a tier before there was a tier break. So I decided to move on him.
Yeah, well, speaking of tier breaks, I've been looking at your running backs, and this is, again, where our minds have met here and what you should worry about, Kaz. But I have not hesitated on Ronald Jones, not at all. Matter of fact, I may have drafted him a little higher than even what you have done, and I like the way he runs, and I'm hoping he can hang on to the football and stay on the field longer. There's a number of backs here, complete backfield. They keep adding guys. And I see some people just throw up their hands and say, I'm avoiding that backfield. I'm not. I like other backs in that backfield as well, but Jones I like best, and I want him on my team. And so it gave me great validation to see that Jones is on your team. What are you expecting, and how often will you be playing him?
I think he's going to have a great opportunity at flex player. I ended up with a lot of Fournette last year. And he did very well down the stretch for me. I had no Rojo and stayed away from Rojo faithfully. But when you watch the Bucs play, when he got the ball, if he held on to it, you know, he had burst and he made some great runs. So I had to make a calculated guess. I think he's going to have opportunity. I don't know. I don't think they have any strong competition for him and Fournette. I don't think Bernard's going to take a whole bunch of that. So I think he'll just be a good opportunity if he gets that role. But he will have games that I know for sure he'll take off.
Beautiful.
Kaz, okay, so I teased this earlier about Chuba Hubbard. The only two rookies you drafted in Genesis this year were indeed Hubbard and then also Jalen Waddle, who got drafted early by the Dolphins in the NFL draft. So I can't remember if I've said this on this podcast or not, but I was never a big Jalen Waddle guy. Oh, you know what? I know I said it on a different podcast, but I'm not a big Jalen Waddle guy. But so sort of tell me your expectation on why you like Waddle this year. And I know Hubbard sort of has to, you know, he's got to have an injury or something, you know, in order to be fantasy worthy. But if that happens, talk a little bit about what you would expect for him as well.
Sure. Typically, I don't like taking a whole bunch of rookies in redraft. I know there's some of my fellow 26ers who love jumping on the rookies and really load up on those. I like the vets. I like some of the what you know about the guy. But I was getting thin at wide receiver. I think Waddle playing with Tua had some opportunity. He's certainly got some speed. Hopefully he's healed from that injury. So I think he is one of those kind of top 3-4 receivers in the class, and I see him being a flex fill-in quite a bit. As for Hubbard, I'll admit part of it was a sentimental Canadian pick. Like you said, he's not going to see a whole bunch of field time with CMC, even if they cut back CMC. If they say they're going to cut back CMC, that's probably cutting them back to 80% of the touches. Now, we saw an injury bug there last year and what that did for Davis. So, good backup. I'll hold them, and I get to pick the Canadian.
I love it. You know, Kaz, I'll tell you, in my work as a player agent, when I go around the country, and I seem to get in touch with some of the Canadian kids that are down here playing. I spoke to one recently, and they always have a tremendous work ethic and are really, really proper, adequate, and very pleasant to deal with, and and talk to. It's just maybe it's that Canadian upbringing. You got a little bit of that ringing in your voice right now. You haven't challenged anybody or haven't thrown down with anybody yet. But we've got to ask you. We got to ask you to continue this genuine and generous personality of from Canada, and let us know who are some of the other rookies that you like. Because Balky and I have been following rookies all spring. And Balky, I don't know if I'm speaking for you or not. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But we saw very, very few surprises in the draft. It's the first draft I've ever watched where I felt like I had a good feel for every offensive possible fantasy rookie that would be picked. So I've got my guys lined up. Can you tell us some of yours without tipping your hand as to your next move as a 26er?
Sure. You know what? There is. I was fortunate enough that I've wrapped up my 9 dynasty rookie draft, so there's no more secrets to let out. I had a pretty diversified group, so I only had a few early picks. I had a couple chase. I had one Pitts that I got through a deal. So I was more in that kind of 1.8, 1.9 range, and it wasn't a very pleasant place to be. I didn't find it. I did end up, you guys were talking earlier about Trey Sermon, so I did end up with a few shares of Trey Sermon. So I was happy to hear that news clip this morning. I got a few Ramondre Stevenson just because he's supposed to be a power back and ending up in Belichick's offense. We'll see what happens with him. But I was really, I found and there was a flock of receivers, really good, talented ones, but landing spots and opportunity, I just didn't feel comfortable about very many of them.
Okay, fair enough. I've gone rookie crazy, so we'll have to get together. We'll have to get together around week 11 or 12 and figure out who was right. But meanwhile, this class of rookies not known for being as deep as some in the past years, but I see a lot of talent, and I've been picking it, and let's hope some of it plays. But
there's certainly I found lots of guys that found their favorite wide receivers, whether they were just guys that they studied a lot or were fortunate enough to see lots of their games. So I think there was lots of talent, just so much uncertainty. And that's kind of why I stayed away from them. I ended up with a Shara Waddle and a Shara Smith and a Shara Bateman, and so little bits and pieces of them, but no one that I really loaded up on.
Well, as Brad, they say in Canada, it's a process.
Yes.
Yes, you are right. Brad, I'm just kind of curious when you talk about, because we're talking redraft. When we talk redraft on this show, you said that historically you've liked the veterans. Is that kind of true in Dynasty too? Do you find yourself not going gaga over rookies and swapping out those picks for more proven players, or has it not always been that way for you?
Well, one of the challenges with the 26ers and playing in their leagues is that there are a few of the guys that go really gaga over rookies. We got guys that go hard on rookies. I got guys that go hard on tight ends, guys that go hard on running backs. So you kind of have to roll with those punches in a way and find out where your niche is and where you get your value. So I like to think I'm not paying too much for the rookies. I like them, and I have lots of them end up on my lineups eventually through deals and stuff like that. But during drafts, I sometimes don't see the value in them.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'll say one thing about drafting with the 26ers. It reminds me very much of going live to Las Vegas, because if you think of a player and can make a case for picking him, you better pick him. Because don't fool yourself that he's going to be there when he comes back around, rookie or veteran. And I've experienced that almost in every round. And because of that, I've been elevating the players that I want. And, it's one aspect I love of drafting with you guys is, the team is going to be uniquely yours when you're finished with it, because if you hesitate and think you're going to get someone later, you're most likely going to be wrong.
Brad,
group of guys.
Yes, they are, no doubt, and they've shown that time after time over the last several seasons here in the FFPC. I always like covering the Genesis League with the 26ers live for sure. Brad, I do want to get to a couple of emails from some listeners here. The first one is from Andy in Pensacola, Florida. He writes, "Hi, Brad. Are you seeing any value on the perimeter passing attack for the Patriots this season? I'm wondering if Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, or even N'Keal Harry is worth a dart throw this year." Nice work in Genesis, man. That is Andy in Pensacola, Florida. Andy, thank you for the email. Brad, do you have any thoughts on that between Aguilar, Bourne, and Harry? Any of those guys tripping your trigger given where they're going in FFPC drafts?
Absolutely. We were going to talk about some later round flyers. I ended up with a lot of Aguilar this year. In rookie drafts, round 6, he was always there. Patriots paid him a lot of money. Don't know who's going to be quarterback. That's going to be the one caveat to him. But Bill doesn't like to spend money, and hopefully they're going to use him. So he could be a real surprise target hog.
Farrell, have we talked about Patriots receivers with you at all? I feel like we've touched on Harry, but we haven't talked about Aguilar or Bourne much with you.
Aguilar to me is a wonderful selection, and I think he is. I think he wouldn't have been run away from too many teams like he was from the Raiders. I think something at the end of the season. Perhaps it was the Miami game, bad taste. They just in their mouth just decided to part ways. But I think he'll be part of that New England culture, and I think he'll benefit from that. So yes, and he was very productive, and could separate from coverage all over the field. He's physical. He can get off the line. He can beat you deep. He's difficult to cover. And I agree with Kaz. We don't know who's going to be the quarterback, but both styles of the quarterback he'll be responsive to. So I really like the acquisition, and he would be my go-to Patriot here. I'm not too impressed with many of the other receivers just from what I saw this past year. And Myers caught about 55 balls, but never found the touchdown, never found the end zone last year.
According to Football Guys Players Championship ADP data, Nelson Aguilar is currently going as wide receiver 65 in the 15th round right now. Kendrick Bourne is wide receiver 105. He is going in the 20th round when he is picked. He isn't always picked. And then N'Keal Harry isn't even being drafted right now, too. So I think that everybody's on board with you guys. Aguilar is the pick if there's going to be any value with the Patriots receivers this year, especially no Julian Edelman there as well. It's something to think about. One more email here before we get to Farrell's final question for you, Brad. George in Greensboro, North Carolina. Greetings, Kaz of the North. Who makes for a better backup running back stash, Gus Edwards or Jamal Williams? George, thank you for the email. We appreciate you listening. So you have Gus Edwards. You would like to think backing up J.K. Dobbins in Baltimore, but who the heck knows there what Harbaugh is capable of. And not the first time I've said that, too, although I'm usually referring to his brother. And then Jamal Williams backing up DeAndre Swift in Detroit. So, Kaz, your thoughts on who makes the better backup running back stash this year between Edwards and Williams?
I'm wondering if that fella has access to my lineups because I own both those guys a lot.
Really?
I like Gus Edwards. I don't know if it's going to be – he'll certainly be the number 2 in Baltimore, but to be a 65-35, 60-40, I think he showed really well last year. They're a running team. I know they got their receiver. They drafted their receivers this year, but I still think that's their bread and butter. And I think with a running quarterback, it opens up holes. And if he gets his playing time, I think Gus Edwards is a great guy to have on your roster.
Just looking at this right now, as far as their ADP goes, Gus Edwards, running back 45 at the 11:05 right now, so obviously literally a mid-round pick. Jamal Williams, when I look him up, he is, and why I just had it now, why can I not find it? Boy, why does this always happen? Jamal Williams, running back 52 at the 12:08. So Edwards going a little over a full round ahead of Williams right now, but both in that sweet spot where you want to take those running back steps. Williams going right around Chuba Hubbard, Latavius Murray, J.D. McKissick. That's all the territory there. And then Edwards, Darrell Henderson, Jeff Wilson, and Devin Singletary. That's where they're going. So that's, you're looking at 7 running backs over the course of about a round and a half there, as far as that goes. Farrell, we have enjoyed Brad on the show tonight and picking his brain. Before we let him go, we do have to ask him one more question.
Yes, we do, Brad. We're going to have to get you to come out of your true spirit as a 26er and as a Canadian. You're going to have to go negative, because you're going to have to tell me somebody that you're completely avoiding. And then, and you've touched on some of them already, but I got a feeling that your list is deep. This is the time of the year when everyone starts to think about who is that sleeper, who isn't being talked about. So somebody that you don't want any part of, and somebody that is a crafty sleeper for you.
Okay. Easy to do. And it's not even being that hard. I'm just going to say I would not pay the price that he's going at, but I'm completely off Cam Akers. I think that him going as between RB4 and 6, I think probably now, is way too risky. He looked great at the end of last year, but I still think that Henderson was banged up, still lingering from his earlier injury. And I'm not convinced that Akers is the bell cow that everyone is drafting him at.
Impressive. A first-round bust, Balky. We haven't had a first-round bust come out of this question all season. Now, that's impressive. What about
it's good stuff.
And then for me, I had 2 sleepers. Besides, you guys were talking a lot about my back end of my Genesis draft here, but and I think you talked about him during the draft, Farrell. Rashad Perryman. I think that Detroit's going to be playing from behind a lot. They're going to be lots of garbage time. If he can stay healthy, I think he'll be a great collector of garbage points in Detroit. And then I thought Farrell was going to talk about my other guy earlier when he went to Dokes. The other guy I'm grabbing in the last round of all my drafts is Ahmed from Miami. I think he showed some good burst and some good play last year when Gaskin was injured. I'm not convinced that they've thrown in the towel on him yet.
What more do you know about that player? We're talking about the first name is Salvan.
Yeah, Salvan Ahmed, I think it's pronounced.
Yeah, that's the player from Washington, right? University of Washington.
That's correct.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good player. That's a good player. Yeah.
Farrell just knows them by whatever they did in high school and college. That's how he references all these guys going forward, which I totally get. It makes sense. Brad, what a treat talking to you tonight. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's not often we get the Genesis champ on these airwaves. It's not often we get a back-to-back Genesis champ on these airwaves, and it's not often, it's never happened, where we got a back-to-back Genesis champ the week after he may have just drafted the 3-peat team. So very excited to talk to you tonight. We got gleaned a lot of insight from you. Thank you so much for carving out a little time on a Thursday. We will all follow you on Twitter at Casmo11FF. And don't be a stranger. We'll talk to you again real soon. Good luck in Genesis and the 26ers 2.0 in all your leagues this year, man.
Thank you, gentlemen. Really enjoyed it tonight. It was great.
Kaz of the North, ladies and gentlemen. Good stuff from him tonight. Always appreciate when we get one of our friends to the North coming on, Farrell, and much like the Canadian football players themselves, like Chuba Hubbard, he didn't disappoint. And I think, sometimes I feel like people. Here's the thing with the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. I think initially when we started, the Dizzle and I were talking about bringing these guests on. And I said, we're going to learn so much from these guests. We're going to learn all these things we never thought of before. And we have learned some revolutionary things, not always, the most financially and fiscally rewarding things when you talk about drafting in high stakes fantasy football, but definitely some new terms, new tactics. But then we get a guest on like Brad that I don't necessarily think they're out to reinvent the wheel, right? They're just out to win leagues. And sometimes it's a good reminder of like sticking your guns, going with your gut, getting your guys, having confidence in your process and how you do it. And look what he's done. Won Genesis the last 2 years, and he won the 26ers Dynasty League this past year too. So always good to talk to players like that can reinforce our beliefs or shed some light on some things that maybe we've ignored.
Yeah, I mentioned it's great validation, and in Waller's case, that's a perfect example. We led with that question about the Raider tight end. Now, he said, if I can get that repeat performance, I'll take it. So he's comfortable with that. He understands that. I'm going to tell him that that there's room for more, and he alluded to that. But there were 6 or less targets for Waller in 4 games last year. Now, he did have double-digit targets in 7 games. And that glorious game with the Jets where he was targeted 17 times, caught 13 for 200 yards, that was fascinating. The announcers just finally, there's Waller again with a 15-yard reception on first down. It just became old hat and expected in the game. But, I see potential room for statistical improvement for Waller again. And this is the first person we've had on the show and the first person that I've talked to that's mentioned that excellent depth in the Miami backfield. And I'm not sure, despite the play from Ahmed last year and the great college play from Jared Dokes, I'm not so sure we can find a lot of fantasy players that can tell you who those two are. And Kaz has a great understanding of what's going on in that backfield.
Farrell, far be it from me to create even more controversy between the Genesis and Revelations drafts. Not controversy, but maybe bad blood. But, the unofficial mascot of this show and the official mascot of the Revelations draft, our good buddy Ron Meyer, at Tupacker on Twitter, has said for years that Revelation sets the ADP. Now, I don't want to, just go throwing everything into oblivion here. But ever since Darren Waller was made that final pick of the first round to make him a third tight end going in the first round, according to Football Guys Players Championship data, he has nudged ahead of George Kittle to be the second tight end being drafted in FPC leagues right now. Now, did Kaz of the North and the Genesis drafters have anything to do with that? Perhaps. But who are we to tell? We're just reporting the facts here on the show, and these are the facts as they were faithfully submitted by Douglas C. Niedermeyer here this 13th day of May, 2021. All right, moving on to a couple of emails here tonight. Now, Farrell, this is something that has eaten up a lot of my time in doing my sports talk show in Northeast Wisconsin here in weekday afternoons. Aaron Rodgers, we have an email about him. And it's from Howie in Columbia, South Carolina. So this is clearly, as we've seen from national media, this is affecting everybody nationwide. How are you two luminaries handicapping the Aaron Rodgers situation? Packers, someone else, or retirement? Thanks. That is Howie in Columbia, South Carolina. Farrell, I think we broached this, but we haven't really gone deep into it at all. Do you have any feelings on how you would treat your drafts in regards to Aaron Rodgers right now?
Well, he asked us to handicap it, right?
Yes.
1 to 5, Rodgers returns to the Packers. 8 to 1 that he plays for another team, and 80 to 1 that he retires. So I really
think I'd agree with all those. And Farrell, the only thing I would, and I don't even know if I disagree on it with you, I might push that 8 to 1 to more like 15 or 16 to 1. I'm pretty confident.
Well, the only reason that I would give it those odds is the team that's in position to get him, the Denver Broncos, have such assets to trade for him.
And cap space.
Yes. And so it's a fit. And the general manager, Peyton, is very familiar. Well, who isn't familiar with Rodgers? But being at the Vikings for all these years, he's been in a unique position to understand who Rodgers is. He's a California Bear guy. A lot of same backgrounds. This team is run by a Hall of Fame quarterback. There's a lot of reasons to think this might work. But I think what fantasy players are concerned about is Rodgers not playing. And I say that's the longest shot that you could imagine. And, the competitive aspect of this player, if you read him on the field when things don't go right or he thinks he hasn't been given the opportunity to win or make things right, is disgusted. And then the other thing is that he loves the teammates. You can see how they're all talking about him. And they wouldn't be talking about him this way if that love back and forth wasn't mutual. So this guy won't survive outside the locker room. And that's the part of football that we don't see, but is of the most important to football and the family that he is in. So that's what's going to bring him back, even with the general manager there in Green Bay and what happened with some of the coaching decisions last year. But yeah, it's going to be a wonderful thing to watch.
I don't want to throw any pundits or analysts or reporters under the bus here, even though I have publicly on airwaves up here in Wisconsin. No, I don't want to. That's not my style, and I shouldn't be trashing people.
I want you to.
But I'm gonna say this, Farrell. I'm gonna say this. John Kuhn was on NFL Network again yesterday. This is the second time I think he's been on there in the last week. Mm-hmm. James Jones, obviously on NFL Network. These are guys that are actually talking to Aaron Rodgers. These are guys that have texted, that they've called, and we're getting very positive vibes about the situation being fixable and that he comes back to Green Bay. Now they've stopped short of saying, "Oh, he's for sure coming back," which how can anybody know what Aaron Rodgers believes or thinks right now except for him, right? He's the only guy who knows what he's thinking. But I tend to put a lot more weight into those comments than anonymous sources or reporters who weren't talking to Rodgers or any, you know what I mean? I just think that, and I put my money where my mouth is. Last night, Kentucky run the daylight draft. I took Aaron Rodgers at the 10:04. I felt great about it. In fact, I was hoping he would get to me. I didn't even know if he was going to get to me, but I'm very thrilled to get him there. I was very happy with that. I think he's going to be back with Green Bay. I don't think he has the season in 2021 that he had in 2020, but I bet it's pretty close, and I'm excited to get him in the 10th round. Moving on to Al's email from Austin, Texas. Now that the Eagles added Kerryon Johnson through waivers after drafting Kenneth Gainwell, does that make Miles Sanders someone to avoid in FFPC drafts this season? That is Al in Austin, Texas. Al, we thank you so much. I can tell you right now in Football Guys Players Championship drafts, Farrell, Miles Sanders has tumbled a little bit. We saw him go as high as the 101 in some Football Guys drafts last year. He was consistently going in the mid to latter part of the first round. This year, running back 18 at the 305. Considering the Eagles drafted a pass catcher, considering they picked Kerryon Johnson up off waivers, are you worried about a potential timeshare or maybe Miles Sanders not being on the field on third down for Philly this year?
I can't imagine it. I think Miles Sanders gets plenty of play. These guys are being picked up for a reason, and Kerryon Johnson's got some skills. This is a second-round draft pick at the running back, if I'm not mistaken, and teams don't pay that draft capital for running backs that can't help. And he got into the situation, which is the Detroit Lions. So you expect if he gets a landing space, he's going to start a new career and be very good. Miles Sanders, he's going to have enough to take advantage of it and be a fantasy player that will give a return in the middle of the third round. And think about Philadelphia's team last year and all the things that they had to do to put together an offensive attack, both at the running back and the receiver position. They feel that they've got to get more talent on the team. Boston Scott, the giant killer, is still there, but he's an undersized third down player. They need depth at the position. Miles Sanders is their go-to guy. Miles Sanders in the middle of the third round is an excellent pick. I chose him today.
I'm looking at one final email here before we call it a show, and that is Fred in Pomona, California. Fred writes in, "Hello, Balky and Farrell." Fred's emailed us before. He's a longtime listener. "Hello, Balky and Farrell. Who is the guy to draft in the Jets' backfield this season? And none is indeed an acceptable answer. Great work on the live draft coverage last week." That is Fred in Pomona, California. Fred, thank you for listening. Thank you for emailing, obviously. So when we get into the Jets' backfield, Farrell, it's kind of wild. It's kind of wacky. there's a lot of players there. You have the rookie in Michael Carter. You have the free agent signing in Tevin Coleman. Josh Adams and Ty Johnson are also there. And don't forget about LaMichael Pirine. Is there a player there that I've named that you would be willing to put a chip on for fantasy-wise this season, or is it a situation to avoid for you?
Because of the relationship with the coach, you go back to March 20th, I believe, is when he signed with the Jets, and that's Coleman. So because of the relationship with Robert Saleh, I'm going with Coleman to get the best chance to play in this situation. He is, Coleman, very, very familiar with him, with what he did at Indiana, and it's been a while since he came out in 2015, but it's the talent, the big playability, it's all there. We remember it. I think there's something still left in the tank for this player because Saleh is no dummy, and he has talent around him, and he is a loyal players coach, but not to the point of giving players opportunities that they don't deserve. And so when this got my attention, when after taking that job, he immediately signed Coleman. The Carter is a very good college running back. Coleman's got about 3 or 4 inches on him. Carter, low to the ground, power runner, is a good player. They'll have a mix in the Jets' backfield, and the Jets have an offensive line that's coming together with one of the biggest tackles in the game. Don't discount it. The answer is not none. And Coleman, I know you'll go consult the mojo, Bucky, but Coleman basically is a giveaway player. It's close to the very end of the draft. After the kickers and defenses for some teams go, Coleman is still on the board.
You are right. Tevin Coleman is going fairly late. Now, I'm just going to give you Carter and Coleman's ADP because seemingly that's the only 2 players that are being drafted right now. Michael Carter is going first at running back 31 at the 708. I think we mentioned that earlier in the podcast when we were talking about Trey Sermon and Raheem Mostert. But that's where Carter's going. Now, Tevin Coleman is going much later, running back 56 at the 1404. And that's the territory of Ramondre Stevenson, Tariq Cohen, Phillip Lindsay, who actually I like quite a bit this year for his value, and then Darrington Evans. So I think that that if you look, again, Farrell, you mentioned it earlier, sometimes take the cheaper option. Tevin Coleman's going to be cheaper than Michael Carter. And I believe, and I have nothing but speculation to go on, I believe Carter's ADP is going to rise as we get closer to main event season and the actual start of the NFL season as well. We'll see what happens, but I think that's where it's going to go, and Coleman might be even more of a bargain. We had nothing but bargains on the show for you tonight. All the analysis was free. There's some very talented players and co-hosts as well. So, Farrell, I want to thank you for popping on. Enjoy the show in Louisville tomorrow. I'm going to see Aladdin Jr. with my kids tomorrow. Can't wait for that. Go. That'll be an epic night, different kind of fun, I think, than you'll be experiencing tomorrow. But thanks so much for popping aboard on Thursday, dude.
Thank you, Valky. We'll see you soon.
Check out Farrell's Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. Don't forget to follow him on Twitter at JFarrellElliott. I just drafted another league there. I'm actually going to be drafting in the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship Checkered Flag Championship, which I actually was fortunate enough to win last year. I'm going to defend the belt in a league on May 31st. So if any of you don't have any Memorial Day plans and you're looking to get into a draft, I think it starts at like 8 or 9 Eastern that night. But that's when I'll be drafting and defending the belt. I might hop in another one of those yet, too. I'm not really sure yet. But you can sign up for that at KFFSC.com. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for our show this evening. I do want to thank Kaz of the North, Brad Kezema, for popping aboard tonight. You can follow him on Twitter at Kazmo11FF. Farrell Elliott, I want to thank him, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you. Now, we will not be back on Friday. It's going to be another Thursday show next week. 10/9 Central, we will be back on Thursday. I believe, I don't want to say his name yet because he hasn't crossed the T's and dotted the I's yet, but I believe we'll have a very accomplished Football Guys Players Championship winner on the show on Thursday. Look forward, who's never been on the show, too, before. So I've never interviewed him. It'll be a lot of fun if we can get him on. If not, we'll get somebody else that is going to help you guys out in your drafts for sure in any event. A reminder to register for all your FFPC best balls at myffpc.com. Don't forget about the Dynasty startups that are going strong, as well as getting in on the Football Guys Players Championship Early Bird Competition. Get Football Guys Players Championship Competition Early Bird promo, which is a free $35 FFPC team. Want to make sure you guys are getting free team credits for that. Save $100 off on the FFPC main event. Well, 2.5 weeks till that early bird expires for the main event, so get in on that. And, of course, the KFFSC checkered flag competition at kffsc.com. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll be back on Thursday. Your early start to the weekend starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and heard around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
I want to thank Frederick the Younger, of course, for our outro music tonight. Check out their music, fredericktheyounger.com. And one of the other things, I feel like I didn't give shout-outs to everybody in the chat room. Normally when we don't do the show on a Friday, the chat room is a little bit lightly attended. Not tonight. We had a bunch of very accomplished players in there. Stuart Keene popped the board. Obviously, Kevin Williamson was in there. Wayne Ellis, Hudson Kern-Reeve. Bunch of, and I'm probably forgetting some others that were in there too. But I'm just seeing now, 26er Dynasty podcast. I don't know who that is. I didn't know there was an FFPC 26er Dynasty podcast. I'm going to have to do some searching on this and check that out for sure. So, I might be mentioning that on the show going forward. I had no idea that this was a thing. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you again at 10/9 Central next Thursday. Enjoy your weekend, everybody.